I'm delighted to say we've been joined by Kari Morley from Anglia, Ruskin University. And Kari is going to talk to us about the impact of AI on HE and what we in libraries can do to support students. So without further ado, over to you, Kari.
Thank you very much. I heard all the kind of feedback from the groups there, and a little bit nervous now because everyone's talking about AI. So hopefully I don't embarrass myself. So that's fine. So let me share my screen. Okay, the big banner with the contractual obligation to talk about University of the Year. So yeah, now that we've gone past that and mentioned it's on the slide because I have to, welcome everybody. So there's my name on there. Okay. So moving on, first, full disclosure, I'm no longer a health librarian. I have to kind of admit that. I feel like I've kind of snuck in. But yeah, so I deal with more kind of engineering. So that's kind of how I got into this, engineering and computing. So I've been a little bit obsessed with AI since it all kind of launched, or it got in the news. But what I'm going to be mainly focusing in on, obviously, impacts it's having on here at HE. So I work at our university. I support a wide range of students. It's not just engineering, but lots of different students, and the sort of things that I'm hearing from the academics and what we're having to do about it. I'm going to talk about the range of different academic tools. So I heard some of these things were being mentioned, but it's more just kind of looking at what ones are out there and the different types of categories there are, and which ones we should be kind of focusing on, I think, on. But then also I've been really looking at kind of employment skills and what we can do as libraries to help students prepare for working with AI in the future. So I'm hoping it's a little bit kind of more practical about what we can do. So yes, moving on. Right, so first off, this has obviously disrupted everything. I've heard all kinds of panic right from the start, and it has been a huge kind of change to a lot of things. And depending on the different courses, it's doing some different things. But I do feel like there's a timeline that we all kind of progress. And I think getting a feel from what people were saying just then, everyone's at a different stage on this timeline. There's people who are absolutely not touching it, don't want to touch it. People are tentatively starting thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe I can try this, try that. And then we kind of accept that it's not going anywhere, and then you embrace it and you get really excited about it and chuck it into everything. So that's kind of where it is, but it's also kind of incorporating these other areas. So obviously this initial concern right at the start from education was, how is this going to affect what the students create? Are they all just going to immediately turn to cheating? I think that was what everyone initially thought. It was just, why would we ever ask them to do anything ever again? They're just going to ask ChatGPT to do it all. But that's not really happening. There is evidence out there that there's tiny amounts, tiny percentage of people are actually using this. People may be dabbling, but yeah, some people are going to use it to cheat, but people have always been cheating on these things. So it's no real worse than it when we really think it is. Then there's this issue of we have to catch up with the students. And this really is where I started with all this on here, because I was finding as soon as I started looking for these things, I would go to YouTube and just type in how to do a literature review. And the first things I was getting was how to use these AI tools to do your literature review in 20 minutes. This is how it's being sold to the students. I am seeing doctors on YouTube promoting how to use these tools to do literature reviews, and they're even using the words systematic literature reviews in ridiculously short time frames. And obviously I have been on a health librarian before. I am aware of these things, and I knew that that was just so dangerous, and lots of things going on out there. But it's being bombarded to the students on YouTube and TikTok, and because I'm looking at these things now, I'm now getting all these things coming through to my feeds, onto Instagram and everything like that. I don't have TikTok. I'm too old for that. But everything else is kind of coming through to me. And we have to catch up. We have to be aware of what the students are doing, because we're definitely seeing the impact. They're coming to us and saying, oh, look, I've got these references. Where are they? Or I know I'm hearing stories about how many people are being caught out from this, from their assignments. So we need to know what they're doing, and we need to know how it's all going. Initially, obviously, everyone was immediately kind of, we need to change all the assignments. And I was hearing reports from lecturers saying, right, I'm just going to do exams for everything. We're going to do vivas. And I was like, that's not practical when you've got 300 students in one module and you're covering multiple modules. You can't do that. So the initial panic was there, and there has been a lot of changes to assignments, but in a good way. as well. There's a lot more kind of, okay, practical elements to it. Okay, we're going to, what are we testing here? It's made the academics change how they're thinking about what they're testing, and they know they can't just set the same essay every single year anymore. They've got to change it up. They've got to ask for real world examples that aren't necessarily in ChatGPT. They're not in these tools. They need to set material within the classes and actually say, okay, work with this, or do it as a patchwork text. So every week we're kind of building on the assignment and understanding it all. You have to turn up for class every time. It's changing all of that. So that's really good in some ways as well. And yes, we do need to kind of look at all these tools, and I think some of them have been mentioned, and I will certainly kind of cover those next. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but there are a lot of challenges. Obviously, it is embedded in our system. We've already mentioned just a minute ago all of the, you know, Microsoft 365's got Copilot. That's there. It's in our systems. I get these little notifications saying, "Do you want to use this?" And well, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But that's the point. We have the choice. We're humans. We have the power over these things. As long as we don't rely on them too much, it's fine. But it just means the students have got them as well. They've got them on their phones. They've got them everywhere they go. It's following us around, and we can't avoid it. The real thing to remember from all of this is it is going to change how we seek information and how we search the internet. That is going to be the big thing. Obviously, Google Gemini is their AI tool, but it's how they're incorporating that into how they search as well. So it is going to be there, and we can't really avoid it. The big worry is that people aren't aware of all the risks, and it's all the risks and bias and misinformation, the deep fakes, all of the other tools out there, the new video creation tool called Sora. If you've seen any of that from OpenAI, the company that made ChatGPT, you can just give it a simple prompt and it creates a couple of minutes of video for you that looks amazing. It's photorealistic. It's incredible. But obviously there is a real potential for misuse there, and we can all understand that. I've seen pictures of certain politicians in situations they would never really be in, just to kind of sway the votes. And obviously it's a big election year around the world, so these things are being misused. We do need to talk about this. We need to make people aware of it. We need to help our students understand how to get around them and how to recognize these things. But yeah, the thing that is obviously is being sold to them is it's made to look very enticing. It's made to look very easy and very flashy, and you can fall for it. The first time I used ChatGPT, I argued with it because I fell for it and I thought it was a human, and it was just like, you're lying to me. And I argued with it for a good 10 minutes before I kind of came to my senses and thought, this is a piece of software. What am I doing? But it was, it's very easy to fall for this. And if we aren't talking about it and we aren't educating and developing AI literacy around all of this, the students are just going to accept that, oh, okay, well, that's what everything is there. I'll just believe it. Or the other way around. They're going to start thinking that everything they read online is made up. And that's another risk. So it's that kind of balance. We need that happy medium, and we need to, okay, fine. We know these tools are out there. We know there's misinformation. We know there's issues, but let's actually kind of like understand it all properly. So I'm trying to do all of this at the moment, and I'm trying to see students and explain it to them. And I'm running workshops and stuff in here, but it's hard. It's really hard to kind of keep up with it all, definitely. But there are opportunities, definitely, what we can do. So we can't avoid it. It's not going anywhere. So apologies for those people who really don't want to touch it. It's there, and you can use it as much as you like, but we do need to be aware of what it's doing. I've spoken about what universities have started doing and what I'm hearing from academics about changing their curriculum, and how they're actually focusing on different things, as well as changing their assessments. But it's more kind of they're thinking, okay, well, how do we help our students understand this, and how do we help them for the future? So it's really, really changing how they're approaching the whole curriculum, depending on different subject areas. Another area I support is business, and obviously accounting and finance. It's a huge area for them and what they can do. There's stories about law using, people developing legal arguments and presenting those in cases, and actually that have come from AI. So this stuff is happening. It's all out there. I've mentioned that we need to develop AI literacy. So ourselves, we need to keep up onto these ones. And it is hard. And I would say that trying to keep up with it all is really difficult. I feel like if I have a week off, or if I'm busy doing teaching and doing lots of other things, I have to catch up with it and have to spend a day or so trying to find, or what have I missed over the last week. it's calming down, but anyone kind of new to it is going to have to kind of start with all of this as well. So another reason why I'm doing lots of these sessions. But there are potentials for universities to kind of incorporate these ones. You can use it to personalize teaching methods. And there are, if you saw you can create chatbots dedicated to your course. You can feed it the course material, and therefore these can kind of sit alongside the students as they're learning, and they can ask the chatbots 24/7 at their own time and their leisure, and say, okay, am I doing this right? Am I understanding this properly? Test their own knowledge alongside it. So the tools can be there. We can embed that into our systems. I believe the VLEs are going to start doing this. So the virtual learning environments like Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, they're going to have these tools embedded in them to make it nice and easy for the lecturers to create chatbots so they can expand what they can do, and so they can focus on other areas or focus on the students who have more complex questions as well. So it's streamlining workloads. And there's also the wellbeing chatbots as well that can be used as well. So we know students are stressed. We know students are upset when they get, all of this, that exam season is really, really difficult on them, especially the cohort that we have at the moment who didn't necessarily have the same schooling, didn't do all the exams. They're really panicking these days, far more than they used to. But these wellbeing chatbots have been proved as a way of kind of checking in on people. It's a nice way of saying, oh, are you okay? And if there is any kind of further need to intervene, then they can bounce that back to the university, and someone as a person, their tutor, a counsellor, can get in touch with them. So it's a way of a safety net. It's a way of catching them before they get too stressed out and drop out and all of those things. So there's a lot of opportunities there. It's changing the curriculum. It's making it more focused on what we actually want them to learn, and it's supporting them throughout all of this as well. Okay. But there's lots of different things, lots of different tools. So first off, what tools are out there? So another area I've been looking at is I immediately thought, okay, ChatGPT is hitting the news, everything, but what else is there out there? What can we use? And I do like to use this picture of this dog. This was an AI generated picture. I didn't ask for a dog when I asked for this. I asked for a picture of books on a desk in a library. And this is what we would call a hallucination. So I like to use them as an example in my talks just to get that point across. Sometimes AI, I say it's not really thinking for itself, but sometimes it just kind of creates things off its own back, and I don't know why, but he's become my mascot, so he's on there. But yes, other tools that we need to be aware of beyond ChatGPT. And I've really, really looked at all the different things that are being sold to these students, all these YouTube videos, and I started looking at them all and started grouping their criteria about what they're up to. And obviously some of these are going to be more useful to us and some of them aren't. And over time, some of them are going to disappear because it's a bit of a Wild West situation at the moment. But there's 5 kind of main categories to all of these things. There's the ones that create, there's the generative AI, so they create text, images, and videos as well now. There's also the ones that are summarizing the text, so that was just mentioned a minute ago. You've also got citation sourcing, where you can ask it for a question and it will seek out citations for you and add those in and say, oh, there's even ones that will say, oh, it looks like you're writing about this. Here's some examples that you might want to use as a reference. There's data extraction, and I think that's a really valuable tool for our researchers because you can upload huge data sets, and instead of you doing it as a person, it can do it very, very quickly. And they're essentially becoming virtual research assistants. So in the early days when I started looking at this, they were kind of like one product would do one of each, but now they're starting to merge and starting to bring these things together and becoming these co-study pilot kind of thing. The co-pilot issue is there. It's being incorporated into all of it. So here's some examples of which ones there are. So Jenny AI is a big one that's being sold to people on YouTube. And I do believe there's a particular doctor who's kind of showing this one off. But what you can do with this one is you give it a question, you say, I'm writing about this topic, and you give it the topic, and it will suggest other ways of phrasing that topic. So you could have it as a heading, and it'll come up with those ones. And then it'll start giving you sentences, and you think, okay, this looks like what I would say. And then if you like it, you can approve it, and it will give you another one, and then another one, and another one. It will just keep doing it. But it doesn't just generate a huge chunk of text like ChatGPT does. It will do it section by section and say, am I still on the right line? Do you want this one or do you want to change it? And you can make those adjustments. There is the option to kind of add citations as you go along. You can see at the bottom it says cite. So if you click on that, and then it will trawl academic databases. I'm still not sure about which ones it's trawling, but it will be able to pull out and say, okay, here's a citation to meet your criteria. So that's Jenny AI for one of them. Cite AI is another one. So you can see here at the top, I've asked it to plan a literature review. So it's come up with that, and then it's started to come out with a few. So the examples it come up with are in the blue box. So this is an area that I help students with, plastic roads. It's come up a few times, so I use it as my example these days. But here you can see it's recommending some literature in there, and on the right-hand side, it's actually got the links to those articles as well. So we all know that ChatGPT does make up references, and it's not good for this kind of stuff, but these other tools are good for it. And these are things that we could really kind of start investing in and looking at and saying, this is going to help our researchers and help our students understand the topics and kind of speed up the process. Ideally, we want them obviously going off and reading the articles themselves and checking it all. But if it's just a way of kind of getting off the starting block and beating the writer's block, then these things are great for it. So that's what Cites AI does. So there's those ones. You've also got the text summarizing tools. So this is where you can upload a chunk of text and it will summarize it for you, either an entire article or just a paragraph of it. Some of them will create flashcards to help understand what you're looking at, which is brilliant. So if you think of this as a student new to the subject, as an undergraduate, and they read an academic article for the first time, it's going to be really difficult for them to understand it. These tools will help explain it to them a little bit better. They can understand different definitions, different terms. It can lead them on to other sources that will help them understand it better as well. So instead of just being, an 18-year-old undergrad who suddenly given a massive article that's really, really terrifying, these tools can help them understand it, help them breathe a little bit easier and go, okay, test their understanding and help them go on. And the capabilities for students with things like dyslexia and other learning needs is really there. It's really useful. And some of these are kind of offered to students as part of their disability support as well. So I've got some examples on here. We've got things like explain paper, which does exactly what it says on here. It will explain elements from a paper to you and teach anything. You can ask it a question. It creates a little chatbot who pretends to be an expert in that field and will talk to you about it. And there's a new one that I just came across this week that I've added on, which is consensus, which is kind of doing a few of these different tools at the same time. Then you've got citation sourcing, which is, I think, what we're all kind of looking at. So you can ask it a question and it will immediately go out and look for citations for you and back up those ones. Some of these will also kind of work alongside you. And if it says, oh, this looks like you're talking about this subject, and it will bring back some sources on there. And yeah, it's a really good, useful tool, but obviously it doesn't replace our searching process. And these are the ones I'm really trying to find. What are they searching? Are they only looking at academic open access sources? Are they doing what Google Scholar is doing? Some of them do have access to the databases, but obviously they can't really have access to everything. Are they just trawling ResearchGate? Those are the kinds of things we're not totally sure. I'm really trying to find out what they're all doing, and I haven't been able to do that yet. So it doesn't really replace the full-on search, and these are the things that I get questions about from PhD students. This is the one that they all want to know about. But yeah, there's lots of different types of tools out there. So Kenius is one of them. So some of you may have access to Kenius. I know lots of institutions have started using it. We're still kind of deciding which ones to invest in. But here you can see there's an article that's been uploaded in the middle, and then on the right-hand side, it's recognized what that article is talking about and making some suggestions as well. So you've got some articles down there, and you can tweak the filters as well and say, okay, well, this is what I've done. So I've selected it I just wanted to look for Industry 4.0 and emerging technologies, and it's brought out those articles from its list on there. And then it's got the links as well. And if you have access to things like LibKey and Lean Library, they can be embedded into Kenius, and then it means you can click on the link and then it will go and find it for you. So there's a lots of fun stuff to play with on here, and definitely more than I can talk about in just this short amount of time that I've got for it. But hopefully you've got a nice understanding of what's available to the students. Data extraction, one I haven't really kind of fully been able to explore myself because they wanted to pay for it basically, so I haven't really kind of done any of those. But the possibility for things like systematic reviews and meta-analysis is, you can upload the data and it will trawl the data set and analyze it for you very, very quickly. When I first started doing these, they were taking hours, or it was saying it could take a few hours, obviously if it's a really big data set, but these things are only getting better all the time. So I've got some examples in here that probably some people have used, those things like Sylvie, Julius, and Atlas. They are the ones that are kind of using here, but absolutely fantastic opportunity to process huge amounts of data in quite a short amount of time. Another little kind of snippet on here, another image on here that I've put on here was I asked Leonardo, I think this one was from, I asked it for a scientist at a desk and it gave me a white man in a white coat. So the bias is there, definitely. Every single image, I asked it about twice, so I got 8 different answers and they all looked like that, just different desks. So just little things that it is up to. So yeah, so there's the different tools. Obviously, this is going to change how we teach. So for libraries, these are the biggest changes that we're going to come across, I think. We know that they're going to be incorporated into a lot more things. They're being sold to the students, and we're getting the questions. The questions started a year ago, even before that. So, but they really are out there, and these are the things we need to do it. But it is changing how students are interacting with information. It's evolving. I liked that rather than just kind of changing it. But it's the whole system is evolving on here. But I do feel like we need to focus more on the critical thinking, teaching people how to identify authoritative sources and looking out for those mysterious ones. And stories like that article that was published without checking just don't help with that, because we can't really say, okay, well, if it's published in a peer-reviewed journal, it's definitely fine. We know that's not true, but there's more evidence of this coming out. I've seen other ones where they have uploaded text into an article and it says, as a large language model, I can only do this, blah, blah, blah. And they've just copied and pasted that into the article straight from ChatGPT without even checking it. And it's been published. And that is the concerning part. So we need to teach our students to look out for these things and watch out for it all as well. And our academics as well, because these are the people, they're the people who do the reviews. So they need to be looking out for these things as well. It is changing in the assessments, so we need to keep up with that. We need to make sure that we're on top of what skills are being required from our students and what they're being asked to do. We know assessments change all the time. We're constantly checking what the assignments are and what they're being looked at, but it's going to change quite rapidly over the next couple of years, I think. So we do need to kind of keep on top of those marking criteria and what the students are being asked to do. I do have this little sneaky question at the bottom, which is, do we think this is going to be the end of the literature review as an assignment? Because obviously, just that sample of tools that we have on here, if it's so easy to find literature, synthesize it, and create the text, why would we ever ask students to do this again? I do wonder how long the literature review is going to last as the tools kind of get better and better. But yeah, I just thought I wanted to throw out that sneaky little question, especially to everybody here who deal with literature reviews way more than I do now. So yeah, just thought I'd be interested to hear what everyone thinks about that. Okay, how am I doing on time? Right, so the next bit I've been looking at is what we can do. So for helping students prepare for this. So there's all this focus, initial panic about what we're going to do about assignments, but then really students are going to be working with AI as they go forward, essentially working with robots is how I've kind of phrased it. So how do we teach our students to be AI literate, and how do we use them in the future? At the moment, students are using AI to do job applications. Our employability service here is looking at this. I've got academics who are teaching their students how to get around the AI selection process, so which keywords they need to use for those kind of things. But we also know that it can, if you're using ChatGPT or one of these tools to write a CV and do your application form, it makes it easier, it makes it quicker, and therefore people are applying for more jobs than they were before because the time is less. They're able to do it. So the competition is now higher. So they need to actually work a little bit harder than they thought they did to be able to get through the screening systems. Generative AI is helping people prepare for interviews because it can generate some questions. You can then replay your answers and replay it back, and it will give you feedback on those answers, which is really handy. You can ask it to help research companies that you want to work for. And there are reports that people have been using it for completing psychometric testing, which is slightly concerning because they should be doing that those themselves. But there's all these things that are helping students get jobs, but also what are we going to do about keeping those jobs? How do we help them kind of prepare themselves to working AI in the future? So one of the areas that I cover, one of the many ones, is architecture. And I know this has been a big, big issue for architecture. There's a lot of concern about how much it's going to replace people within the field. And one of the things that you can do, so you've got these beautiful images that you can create. And I just used a very, very simple tool to create this one. But the academics and the students are using far more comprehensive ones. And you can create virtual walkthroughs of buildings. So the students are able, architects and anyone really can create a building and a video that walks through and everything and shows the client exactly what it's going to look like. And they can do it very, very quickly. In the past, that would have taken a team of people weeks to create. So the process is a lot quicker, but obviously there's the risk of jobs. Do you really need to have a team of people if you're able to do it that quickly? So that's where architecture are particularly concerned. But then they're also finding that some of these AI tools are coming up with things that are just impossible to build. So it's just not possible. So they're looking at those ones. But what it can do is also it can take all the building regulations and all the climate conditions, the soil conditions, everything that they would need to comprehend and look at and study before they actually started building. So thinking more about the engineering side now, it can now do all of that and bring it all together and create the recommendations and say these are going to be possible. And it saves time for the architects and the engineers and everybody else as well. Okay, so that's one area of kind of beyond health. But in health, there's lots of examples of it being used as well. So obviously we know it can do processing data. So big data, huge data sets. It can process them very, very quickly. It's able to streamline workflows and obviously spot opportunities that maybe need to be improved. It can say, okay, well, we don't need to do that anymore. We can do this if we did it this way. There's technology being used for smart health monitoring systems. So you can issue patients with devices and it will spot issues very, very quickly, do the alerts or monitor them. Developing new drugs. I think we've already kind of, in the news, it's been talking about how it's been used to create antibiotics, new strains of antibiotics that we just haven't been able to find before, but it's able to process that data and create drugs and improve the testing processes as well. It can be used in diagnostics and it can process huge amounts of medical images very, very quickly. And then it only flags up problems for specialists and consultants to look at. There is this claim that it's predicted to actually do surgery by 2053, which I thought was a bit alarming, but I wanted to kind of put it on here just to see what everyone thought. And I've even included the citation on there just because we'll see what comes up with that. But if you've got robots doing surgery and you can there certainly power them by AI to create them, but you could actually have the situation where the whole thing is done by by robots and no actual other people apart from the patient are in the room. Is that coming? Is it not? We will have to wait and see. Another thing AI is not very good at, as you can see on this image, is actually kind of creating images of real medical instruments. I don't know what any of those things are, but they look plausible from a distance, and that's why I kind of put it in. So there are things that it is happening in healthcare. It is kind of going to affect everybody, and it's worth kind of keeping up on top of it. So what do the employers want from students? Behavioral skills. Basically, they want our students to kind of look at these other areas. They don't want them to just learn how to pass the tests. They want people. They want people to actually kind of look at these things. They want critical thinking. They want those problem solving, leadership, communication, emotional intelligence and creativity skills, all those things that we know are valuable in the workplace. But the students really struggle thinking like, why do we need to do this? When we try and do these extra kind of curricular activities and things and help them develop these skills, it's really hard to get it across. And sometimes it's hard to teach some of these things. How do you teach creativity? It's not an easy one to do, but that's what employers are all saying they want. AI can't do that, but that's what we want from people. There's also this push for like really wide skill sets. So we want students to kind of think beyond just their course, and have a different range of things. And I think you find that with medical students, they do come from quite kind of, they know to get onto the medical course in the first place, they have to do lots of extracurricular activities. They usually play music, they play sport, all these other things as well. But that isn't true for a lot of other subject areas. But people come to university, get their course, and that's it. They just want the degree, and they think that's going to do it all. It's not going to happen anymore. We want them to develop themselves, and create more rounded individuals with extra skills. And we need them to be adaptable as well. So they need to be prepared to change tact in the future, be ready to learn and adapt as these things develop, because they're not going away and they're changing all the time. So we need them to be prepared for that. But ultimately, employers want humans, really. They want to employ people to be people. If it's a tedious job, then hopefully AI and the robots and all these other things can do that for us. But then we can add those other things. We can spot the problems. We can join the unconnected dots, which AI is not very good at. It can see obvious problems, but when they're a bit more abstract, it can't do that. As humans, we can, and they're the things that we need to kind of help our students develop. Some governments have started tackling this, and I was quite interested to see this. Singapore last month announced their budget for this year, and in that they are providing money for over 40s to retrain. I was a little insulted when they classed over 40s as their older generation. I was like, well, great, thanks. But how great is that? They're providing money. They're investing in their population because they don't want people to be left behind. They know that this is changing, but they do have a different understanding of technology in Singapore. It's really, really embedded in their education system throughout the system. So you've got a lot of MPs and politicians who understand technology in a different way to maybe our politicians do. So they are approaching it differently, but they can see the value, and they are investing in their population and making sure that they're keeping up with it, which is really great. So this is something that hopefully, it's that lifelong learning. This is what we want to encourage, and more of this needs to happen. I know we don't have the power to change all of that, but it's if we keep pushing for it, these things can happen. But obviously, it does raise more challenges for us. So I think the attitudes to students coming into universities does need to kind of be tackled. As I mentioned, we see a lot of the strategic learners who come to university and just want that qualification, tick the boxes, and they're done. The areas I support a lot of apprentices. I support a lot of part-time students who are here sponsored by their companies, and they're just here to tick that box on their CV and say, yeah, I've done it. I've done what my boss wanted me to do. They're the really hard ones we've got to tackle. Also, degrees are very, very focused on one particular subject. If you want to be a civil engineer, you study civil engineer, and that's it. You don't do anything else. But employers want more than that. So we need to kind of break that reliance on that single subject and think beyond it. I know in the American system, they have the minors and the majors, so people are encouraged to kind of expand and not just focus too much. Is that something that the UK education system needs to look at as well? I don't know. But obviously there's going to be some resistance in certain fields. I don't think medical students would want to kind of start studying arts alongside it, even though there is an obvious value to go along with it. They're too focused, they're too time poor. It's really, really hard. Our job really is to kind of try and sell this to them, which is so hard. Trying to convince students to do anything beyond the assignment. For some of them they're just not going to do it. They don't have the time. But we have a job here to actually promote all of this and say, if you want to succeed in the future, if you want to do well, if you want to look back in 20 years and think, yeah, I'm where I should be, then you do need to kind of value these other skills and do what you need to do. You don't want to be left behind by any of it. So we do need to kind of push that. So libraries ourselves, what can we do? I think we obviously need to be up to date with all of the information. So trying to keep up to date with it is hard, I would say that. But I've got some points on this end slide about where you can kind of follow some things that I've been using. So we need to keep up to date with it because we are getting the students asking our questions and we need to be ready and to answer them. We also need to be part of the conversation. And I've probably just been, I don't think it's luck, but I think I've just been quite naggy and I got involved in a lot of these questions and I started asking awkward questions to people higher up in the institution, in the academics, and in the faculties, and saying, what are you doing about this? And I'm now on the working group for the AI across the university, and I'm helping shape the policies as well. And it's a big group. There's a lot of us on it. But we need to be there. The libraries do need to be part of this conversation. We need to be shaping the policy, and we need academics and we need the institutions to understand our side as well. We need to help our students develop their literacy skills. So running programs where we can show them this is what you need to understand, this is how they work, understanding how a large language model works and how it creates those answers is a valuable way of understanding, okay, well, that's why it did this when I asked it that. So providing training for those tools, something we haven't quite reached yet, but I'm certainly doing sessions on explaining it all. But once we kind of decide which ones are going to stick around, then we can do these. And when they're embedded into EBSCO and all the other databases that we use, we need to be showing the students exactly what to do with them and their limitations. And I also think we need to create spaces for the students. So within the libraries, creating that opportunity for them to develop those other skills, creativity, encouraging them to just come to the library and test out these things and be able to ask questions and just be creative and problem solve and all of those ones. So whether there's other kind of workshops that we could run, and other things I've kind of done of like escape rooms and other gamification where we make these opportunities happen for the students. So I think that's something we can all do. There's loads of other things we could do, but I couldn't fit everything onto this slide and everything else. But there's lots of other ideas, and I'm sure other people have lots of ideas. And I would hope that this is getting people thinking about what else we can do. That's the main purpose for this. Is I just want people to talk about it, start the conversations. So yeah, in conclusion, it's not going anywhere. AI is here to stay, but so we need to embrace it. We need to get involved. We need to be part of all of this. And it is an opportunity for our students to help them. It's going to enhance their learning. It's going to test different things. It's going to help them hopefully be more effective learners. That's the hope. Trying to ignore those ones who are just going to use it to cheat, but actually the ones who are using it as study tools and helping improve in their writing and help formulate their ideas. They're the ones who are really embracing it. And they're the ones that we should be focusing on and help the others kind of understand, oh, I could do it this way. That's what we want. I do think that higher education has an obligation to our students to help them become graduates and good employees in the future. So those employability skills do need to come into it. And I know, the health field is a little bit different to others, but it's still going to affect healthcare. It's still going to affect what they do. So they can't ignore it. I do feel like obviously nursing students might think, oh, I'm never going to need it, but it's going to impact on them at some point. So we do need to kind of just make them aware of all of it. Obviously, HE as an overall is changing. It is changing how it teaches. It is coming, but we know HE doesn't move very quickly. This is forcing its hand. It's making it move a little bit faster than maybe it wanted to, but we need to keep up with it and we need to speed up because it's just going to be left behind. And all institutions need to be doing it because they will start to find there will be the lag in the year or two where if one institution is doing more with it and getting more outcomes, then other people are just going to fall behind. And obviously the ones who are driving it are going to get more applications. And it's a battle out there at the moment. So we all need to be working together and we all need to be supporting the students, and we don't want that digital divide to get any bigger. That's another area as well. And I do think as librarians and in the libraries, we have that perfect opportunity to develop these skills. The critical thinking has been a major part of what we do anyway, but really kind of selling it to them. This is a great opportunity for us. We know that this is important. We just need to convince the rest of the institution to incorporate us into this and be part of that conversation and say that don't worry about it. You don't have to do it. We could do this for you. So people have asked me a lot. I was like, is this going to take our jobs? And I was like, well, actually, no, I'm busier now trying to get my head around all of this and helping the students understand it. I'm busier now than I ever was. So it's not it's not going to take our jobs. It's just changing how we do it. Same as before, same as with Google, Wikipedia, and all the other things, the calculator, all of that. It's all this, it's just another tool. So yeah, that was pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Yeah, I'm sure. Are there any questions? I haven't seen the chat yet, but I'm assuming there's some. If anyone would like a copy of these ones, I do have some little questions to you to think about as well. So yeah, how do we kind of develop these behavioral skills? How do we can sell these things to students, and how do we teach them? What programs and workshops are needed to help with them? Some of you are probably running these already, but is there anything missing that we need to develop? And really, really, how do we convince students that all of this is important? It's so hard trying to get through to a strategic learner. How are we going to do this? But yeah, I would love to know what people's ideas and what everyone thinks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kari. That was fascinating talk, really, really useful. And I can assure you there are a lot of questions. It does feel like at the moment that we're kind of I'm feeling like it's a roller coaster ride, and we've kind of just gone over the lip, and we're picking up speed, and we can see some of the rest of the track in front of us, but that's not necessarily all of it. When we're thinking like, okay, right, here we go. There's no turning back now. Thank you. Beth, can you take us through some of the questions,
Yeah,
please?
that was brilliant. Thank you. It made me laugh when you said, I wonder if there's any questions. I'm like, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Going through them, there's a lot of questions. I've tried to group them in similar, because there were some few similar questions coming up. One of the big areas that came up was sort of around because you mentioned about keeping yourself up to date with all the changes, because it's changing rapidly. So people were wondering if you had tips on keeping on top of all the latest changes in AI, and how do you know if you're missing things as well?
Yeah, I've got a few kind of people that I follow on YouTube that kind of talk about these tools. So that was where I started when I wanted to know what tools are out there. And I have got a slide at the end of this. So if anyone wants to share them, then it does kind of show which ones I've been using. So there's a few people on YouTube. And because I started doing that, I was then started getting them on Instagram as well. So there's a few accounts on Instagram that help that with that. And it's just, yeah, it's just kind of following those ones. And I find the ft.com has got a section on AI, so that's more kind of helping with what's going on in business and those areas. So it's trying to find, I'm doing a mixture of people on YouTube who are kind of, pretty good. They're academics, they've got PhDs, so they're showing how they would use it. So that's what I'm interested in for that. But then I'm also kind of getting the more sensible options from the FT and Financial Crimes and stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah.
Another big one is sort of, how many of the tools are free to use, or free for now at least.
Yes, more of them were free when I started doing this than they are now, and I haven't paid for any of them. So all the ones that I've done. So what usually happens is you have the option to kind of create an account and test them out, and you might get some credits per day. So some of them will allow you to maybe do one or two searches a day, and then it will reset the next day, and you can do another one. Obviously, if you pay for them, you get unlimited ones depending on what you do. But at the moment, there's nothing out there that's completely free when it comes to these tools. They are all asking for it, and that's why I'm just kind of waiting to see which ones will still be here in a year or two's time, because I don't trust that they'll all survive.
Probably our biggest area where we were having a lot of discussion, a lot of questions, was around the sort of teaching of AI literacy, because it's quite a new area. There was a question around your approach around to teaching AI with students, what you're doing at the moment with that.
At the moment, I am running these kind of drop-in sessions. So we have a workshop program that any students can book on from any level. So I've been running those, and we're getting a lot of bookings, but not necessarily a lot turning up because they're drop-in sessions. So, for example, I had 10 booked yesterday, but 4 attended on the session. But the students are there, and I'm asking them how to do it all and talking about that. But again, it needs to be updated constantly on what else we do. But at the moment, it's very much kind of, if the students want to know about it, they will come and ask. But I'm trying to sneak it into different sessions as well. So when I've done the major project sessions, so the dissertation sessions with final year students. I have asked the lecturers if they want me to mention it there. And I do a lot of school visits, so sixth formers come in as well, and I've asked the teachers, do you want me to mention it? And they're like, oh yes please, because they don't know about it either. So I've been talking about it with them and getting the sixth formers to understand what they're doing. So I'm tackling it at like any level I can, pretty much. So that's my technique, but that's generally how I do things.
That's fab. And the other, I think this has been quite a big point of discussion throughout the past few days, is about the position of the library as the sort of go-to people for AI. Do you feel that the library are in that position to be the sort of go-to people in AI, or because I know you've mentioned about it being sort of we're in a good position to put ourselves position ourselves as someone to talk to about this?
Well, that was exactly what I spotted last January, and I was like, we need to be involved in this, and that's how I started asking the questions and getting my name out there. So when the university set up the working group, I was one of the first people kind of asked to be on there, and there's a couple of us from the library on there now. But yeah, we are the people who the students come to for these questions. They get their feedback, or they've asked ChatGPT for some references and it's generated absolute nonsense. They will come to us and say, oh, it's done this, can I find them? And we have to explain no. So because it's part of that information seeking and just kind of research services, basically, I do see that the library is the perfect place for it, and that's why I made sure we were involved.
Okay, I can see more questions coming in as we're talking. So question around, how has the university as a whole developed their stance on AI, and then are you feeding into that? So I think you've mentioned this already, so sessions, or are you doing it anyway? So yeah, what your sort of university stance on as a whole around AI?
Yes. So as part of the working group, one of the first things they did was we co-created the guidelines. So that was a whole kind of, if you can imagine 50+ academics coming up with one set of guidelines, that's what I had to deal with. So it wasn't easy, but it's kind of come up with, and it's now hosted on the library website. So and again, they thought that was the best place for it, and it means it's on a libguide, so I can make edits quite quickly if anything changes. So it's not in their academic regulations. There are changes coming, but at the moment we have these guidelines and how to reference it, and those kind of things are on there. But yeah, I'm feeding back basically the questions I get from students to the working group.
Another question, which is quite an interesting one, I think, particularly around tools that summarize literature. We have a question on how do you deal with the copyright issue?
Yeah, there is that issue, and I have kind of mentioned that a few times to students and said, like, you really shouldn't be just uploading huge chunks of text to these things, because obviously that's feeding into it and it's helping train it as well. So the more you use these things, the better they get, and all of that. Yeah, the copyright and AI is a whole other thing that I'm still trying to get my head around. I have to say, I haven't got an answer on that one, but it's just mentioning it to academics, I think, is more important, and the researchers, because they're more likely to be uploading huge amounts rather than just the odd thing from a student, which they might just do a paragraph or a line. But yeah.
So yeah, I think that's our big thing at the minute.
Yeah, there's other people who are better for that one. Yeah.
I think hopefully I've covered the sort of big areas. I'm just going to see if anyone else has any questions that come up as well. But yeah, thank you very much. That's really interesting. It's so much we could talk about with it.
Yeah, it's a big subject, definitely.
Yes, thank you so much, Kari. That was a really interesting talk, and lots of food for thought there. And it struck me, you mentioned very briefly about legislation and the government side of this, and that got me thinking across. Well, one of the things that we have to deal with is the fact that as you mentioned, our sort of House of Commons is not known for being heavily informed with STEM trained people, which is something else that's a challenge for the nation, really. But yes, thank you so much. Really, really useful and interesting talk. Thank you.